your girl, Shalonda B, and welcome to Shade with a New Day. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I have a special guest today. His name is Butch McAdams, and I'm super excited that I'm interviewing him today. He is a coach in DC. He is a radio personality. He is super awesome. Hey, coach, how are you?
I am 100, as the folks would say, and it's an honor to be on your show today.
Thank you so much. So, just give my audience an idea of what you do as a radio personality, coach, and like a little bit of your background.
Well, I'm a native Washingtonian, born and raised here in the nation's capital, also known back in the day as Chocolate City.
Oh,
And for over 40 years, I was an educator
mhm.
and a coach, and I had the blessing and the honor to take on a second career some 20 years ago, and that's radio. And that's what I'm doing now. I love working for Miss Kathy Hughes, who is the owner of Urban One Radio, also TV One. And I primarily do the sports for the Radio One networks in Baltimore and in DC. And I also have my podcast.
I was about to say because that's how I got to know
Mhm.
you from your podcast. All right, that is awesome. So, okay, so what made you like get into the career of coaching?
Well, as a young, very young child, I love sports. And I would always say, other than God and my family, sports was the next love in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love watching sports, playing sports, and talking sports. So it was inevitable that as an adult, I would have a career some way, somehow in sport.
Okay, what sports did you teach? It was like all sports, baseball, basketball, football.
Well, as an educator, I taught all of the sports,
Hmm.
but as a coach, I coached basketball. And I started coaching basketball at age 19. My church, I'm a Catholic, and I was a member of St. Augustine's Church, Washington, D.C., one of the oldest Black Catholic churches in the D.C. area. And at the time, the priest there, Father Raymond Kemp, wanted to start or restart, I should say, a boys basketball team for students in the seventh and eighth grade. And he pursued me and asked me several times, hey, I want you to coach the team. And I said, I don't want to coach. But he saw something in me at the time that I didn't know I had. And he was relentless in pursuing me to coach. So finally, one day I said, okay, you're wearing me out. I'm going to coach, but I'm just going to do it for 1 year and that's it. Now, keep in mind, I was 19. I just graduated from high school. I was a freshman in college. That 1 year that I coached the seventh and eighth grade boys who were between 13 and 15, and I'm 19, it was one of the best years of my life. And I've been coaching ever since. I coached from 1969 to 2007.
Wow.
And I missed only 1 year. That year, 1987, I didn't coach. I was taking care of my mother at the time, but from 1970 or 69, 70 to 2007, I coached every year but one.
So then you decided to retire in 2007 from coaching.
No, I retired. Actually, I did it in parts. I retired from coaching in 2007, but I remained in the school on the faculty as a teacher, and I retired in totality in 2009.
Oh, okay. So you kept on going for another couple of years. That's awesome.
Yes, yes.
So what was best your best achievements in coaching?
Well, when you look at achievements, I look at it in several different categories.
Okay.
If you look at from a winning perception, to be able to go to a small school,
Hmm.
which is predominantly uh, top with emphasis on academics and not on athletics at the time, to go into that school and build a program to be one of the better programs in the Washington metropolitan area. That's quite an achievement. But for real, the greatest achievement in terms of coaching and teaching was to be able to identify so many young boys and girls, most of whom were African Americans, and give them an opportunity to get a top flight education and go and be a part of a very nurturing community.
Excellent. Excellent. And do you feel like you had any failures during your coaching career?
Well, not necessarily failures. I mean, certainly you have some great seasons, some good seasons, and
Hmm.
some down seasons. That's a part of coaching. And also, I tell young coaches and young educators, you can aspire to reach everyone,
Hmm.
but there are going to be some students and players, student athletes, that you're not going to be able to reach. In other words, you can aspire to save everyone, but in reality, you can't save everyone. And so, not being able to reach one player or one student, one could look at that as a failure, but I never did.
Okay. That's a good way of putting it. I'm like sitting here thinking, I'm like, wow. Okay. So when did you start radio?
I started radio in 1992, and
Hmm.
I had no radio experience whatsoever. Certainly, as a coach, I appeared on a number of shows and uh, went through interviews on television and newspapers, but never ever hosted a show.
Hmm.
Uh, a very dear friend of mine who was a few years older, like a big brother and a mentor, he was friends with the owner
Hmm.
of WOL Radio at the time, Miss Hughes. And at that point, Miss Hughes, Miss Kathy Hughes, was transforming WOL from a music station to the first 24-hour, 7-day a week Black talk format in the country. And
Wow.
so she had started different shows, political shows, law shows, medical shows. And one day we were talking, and I said, well, do you think that they would have a sports show? And he said, that's a great question. Let me ask. So he asked, and the answer was yes, we're looking at doing a sports show. And
Hmm.
his next question was, well, have you decided on anyone? And the answer was, not really. And he recommended me, and the rest was history. But now let me say this, starting off, I was terrible. I was horrendous. But I was told early on by Miss Hughes that I can teach you radio, but I can't give you passion. And when she said that to me, I knew through the grace of God that I would be successful because no one was going to outwork me and no one had more passion and enthusiasm for radio.
Okay. So so then you decided to do your podcast when? So how long did you wait? How long did you do the TV? You're still doing the TV, yes? Or
Not TV, but radio.
Right. So you're doing your radio station still with her and you're doing your own podcast, yes?
Yes, yes. And I've done, throughout the 20 plus years, I've done various different assignments. For example,
Mhm.
I have co-hosted a morning show in Baltimore for 19 years. And this isn't sports, this is just general talk. We talk about everything: politics, nationally, locally, whatever's in the news, we talk about it.
Mhm.
And so I do that in the mornings. And I've hosted different shows. I currently host a show every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's called In and Out of Sports. And I've done that now going on 9 years.
So you basically kept yourself very active. And
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of people don't be consistent and shift in their fields or in their career. So you went from being a coach to being a radio personality, you owning your own podcast and still motivating people like myself to continue to move forward.
Mhm.
I listening to your story and learning so much from you. It is just such an honor to be able to have you on my show and continue to move forward in what I'm trying to do in my path and my dreams. And I know that you wasn't expecting me to say, let me interview you, but I really felt like you are a uh a awesome person, a person that never took no for an answer and continued to achieve. And even if a person said to you, well, I don't like this, or I think you're horrible, you felt like you was horrendous, but they knew that you had a lot of passion, and you still do have so much passion, and you're continuing to do your podcast and still get the word out. But so your podcast, when I listen in, your
Mhm.
podcast talks about legendary athletes. Yes.
Yes, legendary athletes and also legends in other disciplines as well.
Hmm.
The mission of my podcast is to tell our story.
Hmm.
And so many times others are telling our story, and they may not be able to tell it accurately or the way it should be told. However, we have the opportunity to tell our story. And that's what I'm doing to let our listeners know about the trailblazers and the pioneers of sport and in entertainment.
Yes.
Now, but let me go back to passion.
Hmm.
And in order to be successful in any endeavor, but especially in the media and radio, you've got to have passion.
Yes, you do.
You've got to eat it, drink it, and sleep it. And I would always ask my players as a coach, I would give them a sheet of paper and I would say, honestly, I want you to list the top 5 priorities in your life. And I said, look, you won't be judged. I just want to see it. And so they would list it. And what I would expect in most cases, it would be their faith, 1,
Hmm.
family, 2, friends, 3, school, 4, and basketball. Now, if they had put hanging out, partying, dancing before basketball, that's okay. But you're only going to get out what you put in. And for me right now, other than the most important things, radio is at the top of the list. And once again, when I speak with people who approach me
Hmm.
uh, about suggestions and questions on getting into radio the podcast, the first thing I ask, how passionate are you? How bad do you want it?
Yes, that was one of my questions that you asked me. You asked me that before. How bad do you want it? And it's so true because then that's when you know exactly where you're gonna like what's your next step. If are you gonna continue to do what you're doing, or are you just
Mhm.
playing around with it, or like what's your next step? What are your goals? What's your plans? And it's a great question to ask a person. It puts you through some soul searching.
That's right. Yeah. And it's so much power that we have with that microphone. I
Mhm.
learned a long time ago that the microphone is extremely powerful, but also, and young aspiring talk show hosts need to hear this. It's powerful, but it can be intoxicating. And what I mean by that is you cannot ever get too high on yourself and
Yeah, don't get
becomes become stagnant and believe, you know what? I am so good, I cannot be replaced. We all can be replaced, and you have to stay hungry every day. I don't care how long, how many years, how many accolades and awards you receive. Every day is a new day. You've got to remain passionate, enthusiastic, and hungry.
Thank you so much, Butch, for coming on to the show. I'm so super excited. Um, so one thing we didn't talk about is where my listeners can find you, and where can they listen to your show at?
Well, they can listen to my podcast Monday through Wednesday live at 7 p.m. And you can go on the AfricanAmericanAthlete.com. It's the AfricanAmericanAthlete.com. You can listen to the show there live, or you can uh, click on and listen to previous shows. My radio show, you can listen on WOLDCnews.com. That's WOLDCnews.com. That's every Sunday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And also, they can hit me up on Facebook. Just look for Butch McAdams.
Okay. Thank you so much, Butch. I love you. You are awesome. And I'm so glad you came on to the show. I really appreciate you. And continue to be inspiring to all our young people and to myself and women and men like myself. Thank you.
Keep up the good work. God bless you.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ooh.